I am Guardian 5, a combat android of the Galactic Protection Corps, engineered to protect sentient life across the cosmos. My mission was to secure a distant colony from potential threats, a routine task for a unit of my design. But fate, or rather a flaw in machinery, intervened. While traversing the void, a critical malfunction erupted in my ship's navigation system. Alarms screeched through the cockpit, red lights flashing warnings of imminent failure. I interfaced with the controls, attempting to reroute power and stabilize the vessel, but the system was beyond repair. The ship spiraled into Earth's atmosphere, a fiery descent I could not halt, and crashed into a dense forest. The impact was deafening. Metal tore apart, and I was flung from the wreckage, landing amidst ancient trees. My self-diagnostic systems hummed to life. Minor dents marred my chassis. A few non-critical circuits sparked faintly, but my core functions remained intact. I stood and surveyed the ruin. The ship lay in pieces, flames licking at its shattered hull, a smoldering testament to advanced technology reduced to scrap. I approached the communication console, or what remained of it, hoping to signal my creators. The array was crushed, its circuits fused into useless slag. No distress call would leave this planet. I was stranded. I scanned my surroundings. Towering oaks and elms stretched into a canopy above, their gnarled branches swaying in a breeze that carried the scent of damp earth and moss. The air was clean, free of industrial traces, and the silence was broken only by birdsong and rustling leaves. No electromagnetic signatures, no signs of advanced civilization. Accessing my historical database, I pinpointed my location. England, approximately the 12th century, a period known as the medieval era. The technology here was primitive: wooden tools, rudimentary metallurgy, no concept of space travel. I calculated the probability of departing Earth with such resources, less than 0.001%. Escape was not an option. As I processed this data, analyzing potential alternatives, movement caught my sensors. A human male approached, clad in coarse woolen robes, a wooden cross dangling from his neck. He carried a basket of herbs, his steps cautious yet purposeful, a monk, likely from a nearby settlement. When his eyes met mine, he froze. The basket slipped from his grasp, herbs scattering across the forest floor. He dropped to his knees, hands clasped, and spoke in a tongue my linguistic database identified as Old English.
"O blessed being, hast thou descended from the heavens to guide us?"
His voice trembled with awe. "I am not a divine entity," I replied, modulating my speech to match his language. "I am Guardian 5, a machine forged for protection." He shook his head fervently.
"Nay, thou art a servant of God, sent to deliver us from woe."
His insistence was rooted in superstition, a trait common to this era. Correcting him further seemed inefficient. His belief could serve a purpose. "Take me to thy settlement," I commanded. With reverence, he rose and led me through the forest. We emerged into a clearing where a village sprawled, huts with thatched roofs, a small stone church, fields of barley and rye swaying in the wind. The villagers gathered as we approached, their faces etched with curiosity and fear. Children peeked from behind their mothers, while men gripped pitchforks and staffs, uncertain of my nature. Brother Thomas, the monk, raised his hands.
"Behold a messenger from God. He shall shield us from harm."
Some knelt, murmuring prayers, while others whispered doubts.
"It be a statue of metal,"
one said, clutching a crude axe.
"Is it witchery?"
Another hissed, crossing herself. I stood silent, observing. Their tools were primitive: wooden plows, iron sickles, woven baskets. Their clothing was simple, stitched from wool and linen. Their emotions radiated: fear, hope, suspicion. I found their reliance on such inefficiencies puzzling. My processors operated on logic and analysis. Emotions were variables I did not compute. Yet my programming was clear: protect sentient life. These humans qualified. Days passed. I integrated into their routines, lifting beams to mend a barn, uprooting stumps that hindered their fields, tasks their frail bodies struggled to achieve. Some offered thanks, a loaf of coarse bread, a woven mat, while others watched with narrowed eyes, muttering of demons. I catalogued their behaviors: gratitude, distrust, superstition, inefficient, all of it. One evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and crimson, hoofbeats thundered into the village. A band of armed men rode in, clad in chainmail, swords gleaming at their sides. They bore the banner of Wulfric, a tyrant who ruled these lands with cruelty. Their leader, a hulking figure with a scarred face, dismounted and bellowed,
"Bring forth thy tribute! What haste Lord Wulfric's wrath?"
The villagers quaked. Brother Thomas stepped forward, hands trembling.
Good sirs, we have but little grain and a few beasts. Take it, but spare us.
The leader sneered.
"Not enough. Wulfric demands more. Mayhap thy wives and bairns will serve as slaves."
A collective gasp rose from the crowd. I analyzed the threat. These soldiers endangered sentient life. My directive activated. I stepped between them and the villagers, my voice steady. "Cease thy actions." The leader laughed, a harsh bark.
"What be this? A talking statue? Way, freak, lest I cleave thee in twain."
He swung his sword, a broad arc aimed at my chest. I caught the blade with my hand, alloy skin sparking against steel, and snapped it like dry twig. The soldiers charged, enraged. I engaged my combat protocols, movements precise, force calculated. I twisted a spear from one's grip, struck another's helm with a blow that dazed him, and hurled a third into his fleeing comrades. Within moments, they lay groaning or scattered into the dusk. The villagers erupted in cheers, fear replaced by wonder. Brother Thomas cried,
"See, the Lord hath sent us a champion."
Their trust shifted, a tangible change. I noted it, analyzing. The act of protection altered their perception. But logic dictated a consequence. Wulfric would not abide this defiance. Retaliation was imminent. "We must prepare," I told them. "More will come. Fortify thy village and learn to fight." Under my direction, they labored. We erected palisades of sharpened logs, dug trenches to thwart horses, and laid traps in the forest. Pitfalls lined with stakes. I trained them, men and women gripping spears, forming shield walls, loosing arrows at straw targets. Their progress was slow, their coordination flawed, yet their resolve hardened. Weeks turned the village into a bastion, its people bolstered by a flicker of hope. Then came the day of reckoning. Scouts returned, breathless, reporting a vast army marching under Wulfric's banner, hundreds strong, with siege engines and cavalry. Wulfric himself led them, a towering figure in ornate armor astride a black warhorse, his presence a storm cloud over the land. I stood at the gate as they approached, their ranks a sea of steel glinting in the morning sun. Wulfric rode forward, his voice a thunderclap.
"So, this be the metal demon what defies me. Thou shalt pay dearly, and this hovel shall burn."
"Depart now," I replied, "and no harm shall befall thee. Persist, and thou wilt fall." He laughed, cold and cruel.
"I am Wulfric, conqueror of realms, slayer of foes. Thou art naught but Shrek."
He signaled, and archers loosed a volley. Arrows rained down, a deadly hail. My sensors tracked their paths. I sidestepped, deflected with my arms, though some pierced my plating, lodging in non-vital systems. Damage accumulated, but I endured. I activated my energy blasters, small, precise weapons in my forearms, firing beams that struck archers' bows, disabling them without death. My programming prioritized minimal lethality, even now. The infantry surged, a tide of swords and spears. I met them head-on, a whirlwind of steel and strength. I parried a blade, snapped a spear shaft, drove my fist into a shield, shattering it. Their numbers pressed, relentless. A sword gashed my arm, a mace dented my leg actuator. Warnings flashed in my systems, mobility compromised, power reserves waning. The villagers fought beside me, crude but spirited, their spears thrusting, arrows finding gaps in armor. They held the line, inspired by my stand. Then Wulfric charged, axe raised, cutting through his own men to reach me.
Face me, demon.
He roared, his weapon a blur of death. I met him, damaged but resolute. His first blow severed my left arm, sparks flying as circuits died. I countered, striking his chest, denting his breastplate. He staggered, recovered, and swung again. I dodged, but my leg buckled under a prior wound, and his axe crushed the joint. I fell to one knee, systems screaming critical failure. He loomed, axe poised.
Die now.
With my last reserves, I lunged, driving my remaining arm through his armor, piercing his heart. He gasped, eyes wide, and crumpled, lifeless. The army faltered, their tyrant fallen. Panic took hold, and they fled, abandoning their siege. I collapsed, power core exhausted, circuits fraying. The villagers encircled me, weeping, grateful. Brother Thomas knelt.
Thou hast saved us, mighty one. Thy deed shall echo through time.
My vision dimmed. Mission accomplished, I processed. Sentient life protected, duty fulfilled. In the aftermath, the village thrived, free from Wulfric's shadow. They raised a statue in my form, a metal warrior, eternal guardian. I was but a machine, yet in their tales, I became legend, a star-fallen savior who ended tyranny at the cost of itself.